Hello and welcome to Flipped GCSE Biology, Unit B4 Nutrition, Lesson 4, Digestion. In this lesson you're going to learn all about what happens to your food in different parts of your digestive system. Let's start with the mouse. Bit of a recap from last time. So you know that food is physically digested in your mouth. That means that the food is broken up into smaller parts. Also, saliva is produced, and that saliva contains enzymes, specifically salivary amylase, a carbohydrate enzyme that turns starch into maltose. So physical digestion starts in the mouth, but also chemical digestion happens as well, using enzymes. When you swallow, the food is pushed down your esophagus by a process called peristalsis. Now, peristalsis explains why you can actually drink when you're upside down, and also why, when astronauts are in space, why the food doesn't just come straight back out of their mouths again. Peristalsis uses muscles within the alimentary canal, and they contract behind the food. A word you see here is the word bolus. This just means a bowl of food. So they contract behind the food and they relax in front of it, and this pushes the food along. As you can see, you've got a ring of muscle contracted behind the ball of food and relaxed in front. And you just get a wave of this muscle action which pushes the food down through the digestive system. From the esophagus it arrives to the stomach. Now the stomach is basically just a big muscly bag. The stomach produces something called gastric juice and mixes this in with the food. The gastric juice contains acid. It is acidic, pH about 2 or 3, and it also has a protease enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin breaks down proteins into amino acids. If you look at this top right-hand region of the stomach here, this explains why we burp. Because of all the chemical reactions that happen during digestion, gases are produced, and these gases all accumulate in this top area here, and when sufficient gases are there, they kind of overflow and escape through the esophagus. Next, the liver. Now the liver is very, very important in digestion, particularly in digestion of fat. So the liver produces a substance called bile. Bile is made in the liver and stored in the gallbladder, and then from the gallbladder it is released into the small intestine. The role of bile is to emulsify fats. Emulsify just means to physically break down into smaller pieces. So if we look at the fat down here at the left, the bile comes along and changes that very big droplet of fat into smaller circles. Next, the pancreas. Pancreas also produces enzymes and releases those into the small intestine. The pancreas can be described as kind of a leaf or feather-shaped organ. It produces all 3 types of enzymes, carbohydrates, lipase and protease enzymes, and releases them into the small intestine. It is also involved in controlling glucose levels in the blood, and you'll learn more about that in another topic. Next, the small intestine. Small intestine is where all of the products of digestion are absorbed. Now also, there are many enzymes which work here. The small intestine has a slightly alkaline pH. So your food comes from the acidic pH of the stomach down into the small intestine where it's more alkali. Small intestine has got a very large surface area. It's got folds, as you can see in this picture from an endoscopy. You can see the kind of ridges in the sides of the walls there, and it's also got villi. We'll have a look at those in a moment. So all 3 enzyme types are produced and worked here: carbohydrates, protease and lipase enzymes. Lipase enzymes, you should remember, break down fats into their constituent parts, which is fatty acids and glycerol. All of the products from digestion, so these small soluble molecules, are then absorbed into the bloodstream. If you could zoom in even closer to the fold in the digestive system wall in the small intestine, you'll see that it's got these finger-like protrusions, and these are called villi. Villi mean that the small intestine has an enormous surface area. This is so you can absorb as much food as possible, or as many nutrients as you can from what you eat. So, The villi has microvilli, which increase the surface area even more. So it has a very thin layer, and on this outside layer all of the tiny little cells have tiny little hairs which make the surface area even bigger. The villi have a very good blood supply. You can see the blood vessels running up through the middle, the capillaries there. And as substances diffuse into the villus, then they are taken through, away from the small intestine in the capillaries and eventually the venules, which are small veins. Blood capillaries take away products of protein and carbohydrate digestion, but the other thing we've got here is the lacteal. Lacteal is part of your lymph system, and that will take away products of fat digestion. So fatty acids and glycerol will not travel in the blood, they will travel in your lymph system. As I mentioned earlier, the outside layer of the villus is only 1 cell thick, which means that diffusion can happen relatively quickly because the molecules do not have to go very far. Now, anything that has been digested and absorbed into the bloodstream is taken straight to the liver in a very important blood vessel called the hepatic portal vein. You can see it running up from the intestines up there to the liver. Okay, so the hepatic portal vein takes the products of digestion up from the small intestine to the liver. The liver then decides when these products need to be released into circulation. It will convert any excess glucose into glycogen, which is the human's way of storing energy. And finally, the food arrives to the large intestine. Large intestine is also called the colon. It's got 3 main parts: the colon, the rectum, and the anus. The main point of the large intestine is to absorb water. It also absorbs some ions and vitamin K, which is produced by the bacteria that actually live in the colon. Now, the colon's role in water absorption can be seen very clearly if you ever had diarrhea. Now, the reason why your feces is liquid in that situation is because the food passed very, very quickly along the colon and sufficient water was not able to be absorbed. Once the waste arrives at the rectum, it's stored there until there is enough for you to go to the toilet, and it leaves through the anus. A couple of important definitions you need just for this lesson. Absorption is when the products of digestion go into the bloodstream or the lymphatic system, and assimilation is when these products are converted into living tissue. If you remember from your nutrition definition, it mentioned assimilation. Try not to get these 2 words confused. Okay, that is it, and here is the bibliography.